When a woman you deeply cared for hurts you, your first instinct might be to chase, to search for answers, to fix what feels broken, to win her back just so the pain stops. That impulse is natural. After all, we're wired to seek resolution, to cling to familiarity, to make sense of something that suddenly doesn't. But here's the hard truth most people won't say. Chasing her after she's wounded you is like pressing your hand harder into a knife, hoping it'll feel like a hug. It won't. All it does is deepen the cut. What you need in that moment is not her validation, not her remorse, not even her apology. You need your own peace. You need space, silence, and the bravery to stop running after someone who already walked away. Because if she hurt you and you're still chasing her, you've made her the reward for your own suffering. That's not love. That's emotional self-abandonment disguised as loyalty. There's a quiet power in choosing not to respond, in not explaining yourself, in not trying to remind her of your worth, because your worth was never supposed to be forgotten in the first place. And if she could disregard it once, no amount of chasing will reteach her how to value it again. The path to making her miss you doesn't begin with tactics, games, or silence meant to manipulate. It begins with healing, true healing, the kind where you stop checking your phone for a message that isn't coming. The kind where you stop rehearsing imaginary conversations and start having honest ones with yourself. Healing isn't sexy, it's messy, it's lonely, but it's also the foundation of every comeback story that ever mattered. You have to allow yourself to feel it, not numb it with distractions or drown it in bitterness. You feel the betrayal, you feel the rejection, you feel the confusion of how could she, and then you rise. Not for her, not to win her back, but because you realize you're no longer willing to stay broken just to make someone else comfortable. And when you stop chasing, when you sit still long enough to rebuild yourself piece by piece, something incredible happens. The power dynamic shifts, not because you played a better game, but because you stepped off the board entirely. She starts to feel the weight of your absence. Not just your physical presence, but the emotional investment, the energy, the attention that once wrapped around her like sunlight. And now it's gone. It's not the loud exit that makes someone miss you. It's the quiet refusal to return to a space that no longer sees your value. She may not show it. She might pretend she's unbothered. But deep down, she'll notice. When you stop chasing, she starts remembering, not just who you were to her, but who she was when you were around, the security, the attention, the love that came without conditions. But none of that matters if you haven't healed. If your silence is just a tactic to make her chase, it won't work, because desperation always leaks through the cracks. But when your silence is born out of self-respect, it becomes magnetic, unmistakable, uncompromising. You start to glow differently, you walk differently, you move like someone who knows that being hurt wasn't the end, it was the invitation to rise higher. And if she misses you in that space, good. If she doesn't, also good, because by then you'll have realized something far more powerful. You don't need her to regret losing you in order to validate who you are. You'll no longer be chasing closure. You'll be living in clarity. That's the difference between a man who's broken and a man who's building. So stop chasing, start healing, let your absence speak, let your progress echo. Let your peace be the loudest message you ever send. Because the moment you start loving yourself harder than you ever tried to love her, that's the moment she'll feel your worth in ways she never did before. There's a moment after she's hurt you when your emotions feel like they're boiling over, when everything in you wants to react, to call her out, to ask why, to tell her what she's lost, what she threw away, how much it hurts. You want her to see your pain, to feel even an ounce of what she made you carry. But the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say absolutely nothing at all. Silence isn't weakness. It's not passivity, it's a decision, it's restraint in a world that glorifies reaction. And when it's used with intention, silence becomes the loudest, clearest message you'll ever send, because people expect noise. They expect anger, accusations, explanations. So when you offer none of that, when you meet her coldness with calm, her chaos with composure, that silence becomes unforgettable. She may not admit it. She might act like she's moved on, like it didn't shake her. But don't be fooled. That silence will echo in places your words never could. It lingers, it haunts, because now she's left alone with herself, with the memory of what she did, with the absence of your voice, your presence, your attention. And suddenly, your silence speaks volumes. You no longer get access to my vulnerability. You no longer get to be entertained by my pain. And let's be honest, some women don't expect you to walk away without a show. They've seen men break down, beg, plead, spiral. So when you don't, when you choose self-control over emotional explosions, that shift confuses them. It unsettles them, because it says, I value myself too much to perform for someone who's already shown me they don't care. But this kind of silence doesn't come easy. It requires inner strength. You'll be tempted to break it. You'll want to send that one last message or reply just to prove a point. You'll rehearse conversations in your mind, trying to find the perfect thing to say that might spark regret in her heart. But here's what you need to understand. Your peace is not found in her reaction. Your power isn't measured by how guilty she feels. It's measured by how deeply you choose to protect your energy. Silence creates space, and in that space you begin to breathe again. You begin to see her actions without the distortion of longing. You start recognizing the difference between what you felt for her and how she actually treated you. You begin to reclaim your dignity, not because she gave it back, but because you stopped giving it away. It's in that silence that you grow. You level up. You stop chasing closure from someone who doesn't even deserve your voice. You stop defending your worth to someone who treated it like an option. You stop participating in your own disrespect. And slowly, day by day, your silence turns into confidence, into boundaries, into a life that no longer revolves around her memory. What happens next? That's on her. Maybe she'll miss you, maybe she won't. But either way, she will notice, because real presence is only appreciated in its absence. And when someone who used to be available suddenly becomes still, when a source of comfort goes quiet, it triggers something deep. She might scroll through your old texts, revisit your photos, wonder what you're up to, but she won't hear from you, not because you don't have anything to say, but because you've chosen to speak in a language only the mature understand, silence. And if she does come back, be careful. Not everyone who misses you deserves a second chance. Sometimes missing you is just a symptom of losing control, not love. Silence isn't just a pause, it's a filter. It reveals who's willing to fight for your presence and who is only entertained by your availability. So the next time someone hurts you, remember, you don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to beg to be seen. You don't need to explain your pain to someone who caused it. Just step back, go quiet, not to punish her, but to protect yourself, because your silence isn't empty. It's full of strength, self-respect, and a message that echoes louder than any word ever could. After she's hurt you, after the silence sets in and the dust settles, there's a temptation that creeps in. This quiet desire to prove your worth to her, to show her that you're doing better, that you're unbothered, that she lost something rare. And while that motivation might fuel a certain kind of growth, the truth is, if your elevation is rooted in wanting her attention, then she still has power over you, and real power, real healing. It happens when you level up without her ever knowing. You don't need to post it. You don't need to hint at it. You don't need to show her what she's missing. In fact, the most profound transformation is the kind that happens behind closed doors, far away from her eyes, far from the need for approval. Because that's when it's real, that's when it's no longer about her, it's about you, finally choosing yourself without needing an audience. You start to grow, not out of spite, but out of clarity. You realize that the version of you who tolerated mistreatment, who stayed too long, who explained himself over and over, needed to evolve. That man needed to be broken a little so something stronger could be built in his place. And you begin that process quietly. You wake up earlier, you get your mind right, you pour your energy into your goals, you stop waiting for closure and start creating momentum. There's something deeply powerful about becoming the man she never thought you'd be, without ever saying a word to her again, not out of revenge, but out of rebirth. Because while she might be watching your stories, lurking on your timeline, hoping to find proof that you're still hung up on her, she won't see anything, because you've disappeared, not out of bitterness, but because you've outgrown that version of yourself entirely. And as you level up in private, you begin to notice the shift. You're not checking your phone anymore. You're not hoping she reaches out. You're too busy building, too focused on becoming someone you're proud of. Her presence is no longer required in your success story. You're no longer performing healing. You're actually healing. That difference is everything. You stop living for moments that might catch her attention. You stop tailoring your progress to impress someone who couldn't value you when she had full access. Because real evolution isn't about being seen. It's about being aligned, aligned with your purpose, aligned with your peace, aligned with the version of you that never needed her approval in the first place. Let her think you've vanished. Let her assume you've gone quiet out of weakness. What she won't see is the discipline behind the scenes, the late nights, the hard conversations with yourself, the unlearning of old patterns, the investments you're making, not just in money or work, but in your mind, your spirit, your future. That kind of transformation doesn't scream. It doesn't demand recognition. It hums quietly in the background until one day the noise of your success is impossible to ignore, even if you never make a sound. And when, or if, she finally does notice, when curiosity gets the best of her and she tries to peek into your new life, she'll find a door that no longer opens. Because by then, you won't just be better. You'll be beyond needing her validation, beyond wanting her back, beyond the version of you that ever chased someone who didn't know how to hold what you gave. This is how you make her miss you, deeply, painfully, unexpectedly, not by trying to manipulate her emotions, not by crafting an image for her to see, but by becoming someone she no longer has access to. By growing so silently, so authentically, that the next time she hears about you, it's through whispers of the life you built without her knowing. A life she once could have been part of, but let go. So don't level up to prove anything. Don't try to be seen, just rise quietly, fully, consistently, and let your silence be filled with progress so undeniable that even in your absence, your presence becomes unforgettable. There's a moment after the hurt when your body is present, but your heart still lives in her world. You may have stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped showing up, but inside you're still emotionally tethered, still hoping, still analyzing, still waiting. And the thing about emotional attachment is, it's invisible to everyone else, but it drains you. It keeps her spirit alive in your mind, even when she's no longer beside you. That's why detaching isn't about walking away physically. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you left behind in someone who no longer deserves access. When a woman hurts you and you keep feeding her with your emotional energy, she can still feel it. Even in your silence, she senses when you're still hoping. She may have walked away, but part of her knows you haven't fully let go. And there's a strange kind of power in that for her, because your emotional attachment becomes her reassurance. It tells her you're still in orbit, still reachable, still soft where she left bruises. That's why the shift only really begins when you pull back emotionally, when you stop allowing her to live rent, free in your thoughts, your moods, your energy. Emotional detachment isn't about coldness. It's about clarity. It's when you stop trying to interpret her mixed signals, when you stop replaying conversations to find hidden meanings, when you stop thinking of what you could have done differently and start accepting that you did your best, and it still wasn't enough for her to stay. That's not your failure, that's your freedom. And here's the secret most men don't realize. Women can feel emotional withdrawal. They may not see it instantly, but it always hits. When she sends that "how have you been" text and your reply doesn't carry the weight it used to. When your voice sounds calm, centered, and distant, when she brings up the past and you don't bite, when she starts to realize she's no longer the focal point of your attention, not because you're bitter, but because you've outgrown needing her validation. That shift, it's powerful, because now the emotional labor has flipped. She's the one wondering, she's the one questioning, she's the one feeling the loss, and that's not because you made her jealous. It's because she can sense that the emotional power she once had over you is gone. She no longer occupies your mind the way she used to. That absence hits different, but getting to that point isn't easy. Detachment takes discipline, it takes honesty, it takes confronting your own fears of being alone, of being forgotten, of losing what you once believed was real. It requires you to grieve without dramatics. To let the fantasy die so the truth can finally live, it means choosing yourself over and over again, even when you still feel the pull to check on her, to reply, to care. You have to remind yourself your healing is not her responsibility. She doesn't need to apologize for you to move forward. She doesn't have to regret what she did for you to rebuild. Detachment is you saying, "I release you, not for your sake, but for mine." Because every time you emotionally invest in someone who's no longer pouring back into you, you rob yourself of the very peace you're craving. And the irony is, the moment you truly detach, you become 10 times more attractive. Not because you're playing games, but because you're finally radiating from a place of strength and independence. She'll feel the difference. She'll notice how your energy has shifted, how the invisible thread that used to connect you both has gone slack. And she'll remember how it felt to be on the receiving end of your loyalty. Once it's no longer there, that's when she'll miss you, not when you cry, not when you fight to stay, but when you disconnect from the outcome. When your emotions no longer chase hers, when you become a mystery again, not because you're pretending, but because you've finally made peace with letting go. Detach not to punish her, but to protect yourself. Because there comes a time when your peace is worth more than her presence, and the moment you stop feeding her emotionally is the moment she starts to feel the hunger she never expected. When someone pulls away from you, especially someone you love deeply, your first instinct might be to match their behavior, to respond to their coldness with distance, to their silence with silence, to their attitude with one of your own. But let's be clear, reflecting her behavior is not power, it's reaction. It means she's still controlling the rhythm of your emotions. What you want to reflect isn't her actions, but her absence, not as a game, not as payback, but as a declaration that you will no longer hold space for someone who chose not to occupy it. There's a difference between reacting and responding. When you mirror her mood swings, her inconsistency, her cold detachment, you're still tethered to her energy. You've handed her the pen and allowed her to write your emotional script, but when you simply step back, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, you're showing her something far more powerful, that you're capable of honoring your peace over your pain. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be cruel, but you do have to be clear, and the clearest message you can ever send is this: if your presence no longer adds value to my life, I will match your absence with my own. Not to hurt you, but to heal me. You see, it's not about giving her a taste of her own medicine. It's about showing her that her absence didn't destroy you. It just redirected you. It reminded you of how much of yourself you had invested into someone who stopped showing up. And now you've stopped showing up too, not because you don't care, but because you finally realized you were the only one still holding on. That moment when she expects you to chase, and you don't, that's when it sinks in. That's when the silence gets loud, because the truth is, most people don't recognize your value until your energy is no longer available to them. And if all you ever did was reflect her behavior, if you argued when she was distant, if you begged when she withdrew, you'd just be reinforcing the dynamic that broke you in the first place. But when you reflect her absence, everything shifts. She's no longer just dealing with the emotional version of you that reacts. She's dealing with the elevated version of you that chooses. You're not doing it to prove a point. You're doing it because you've outgrown the version of yourself that needed to be chosen to feel worthy. And it's in that space, where you've stopped showing up emotionally, mentally, energetically, that the weight of your absence begins to press on her. Not because you ghosted her, not because you're playing mind games, but because the person she once took for granted is no longer emotionally accessible. She can't reach you in the ways she used to, and what was once predictable is now a void. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is walk away from what no longer serves you. Not with anger, not with drama, but with a calm that says, I loved you, but I love myself more now. You're not mimicking her coldness. You're no longer available to be frozen by it. You're not reflecting her mood. You're reflecting her choice to step out of your life. And once that mirror is up, once she sees herself in your absence, she'll begin to understand what she lost. But even then, don't be tempted to slip back into old habits. Just because she notices your absence doesn't mean she's ready to respect your presence. People miss comfort, not always character. She might miss how you made her feel, but that doesn't mean she's ready to value who you are. That's why you don't reflect her behavior, because her behavior was erratic, inconsistent, sometimes even careless. You're not that. You're intentional, you're aware, you know what you bring to the table. So instead of lowering yourself to her emotional level, rise to your own standard. And if she circles back, don't let nostalgia trick you into shrinking again. Evaluate who she is today, not who she was when you first loved her, because growth means recognizing that some connections were only meant to teach you your worth, not confirm it. So when she disappears, don't retaliate. Don't argue, don't compete for attention that should have been given freely. Just reflect her absence, and let that be the loudest, clearest reminder that you were never the one lost. She was. There's a quiet pain in being replaced. In watching someone you gave your best to act like what you brought to the table can be found anywhere else. And in that moment, it can feel like you weren't special at all. Like everything you did, everything you gave was just forgettable. But here's what time and truth will always reveal. Not every man is built like you. And while she may have believed she could replace you, she never truly understood what she walked away from. Until you become the man she thought she could replace, but can't. The goal isn't to make her jealous. It's not about flaunting your glow-up or forcing her to see what she lost. That's surface level. This is deeper. This is about becoming the kind of man whose presence was never average to begin with, even if she couldn't see it at the time. It's about evolving into a version of yourself so complete, so grounded, that her memory of you starts to blur with regret, not because you changed, but because she finally realized she never really knew the full weight of who you were. See, the problem isn't that you weren't enough. It's that she didn't know how to value what you gave, and maybe you didn't know how to value yourself either, not fully. You poured into her before pouring into yourself. You showed up before she even knocked. You loved from a place of hunger, hoping she'd fill the parts of you that felt unseen. But now you're waking up. You're stepping into your own. And the beauty of this chapter is that you're no longer seeking to prove your worth. You're becoming a man who doesn't need to explain it, because the man she thought she could replace was still figuring himself out. Still giving without boundaries. Still attaching his identity to being chosen. But the man you're becoming, he's different. He's no longer available for half love. He no longer sacrifices peace to feel needed. He builds, he leads, he evolves quietly but intentionally. He holds his standard even in the face of loneliness, and that version of you, that grounded, unapologetically whole version of you, is rare. Unshakable, irreplaceable. The irony is, she'll probably realize it too late. Maybe she'll try to find your energy in someone else's attention. Maybe she'll try to recreate the comfort you gave in someone less invested. But it won't feel the same, because while others might look the part, they won't love the way you did. They won't listen with the same patience. They won't show up with the same depth. She'll feel the difference in the silence between texts, in the lack of protection when she's vulnerable, in the absence of emotional safety when she reaches for connection. And that's when it'll hit her. What she lost wasn't just a man. It was a presence, a frequency, a love that doesn't come around twice. But here's the part you have to hold on to. Whether she realizes it or not, whether she reaches out or doesn't, you don't stop growing. You don't pause your progress hoping she'll catch up. You don't slow down so she can recognize you, because the point isn't to be missed, it's to become unrepeatable. And that means you keep leveling up even when no one's clapping. You keep showing up for yourself even when no one's watching. You become the man who commands respect, not by demanding it, but by embodying it. It's in your discipline, your focus, your emotional maturity. The way you move now isn't reactive, it's intentional. You don't chase love. You attract it by who you are, by how you live, by what you refuse to tolerate. And as you rise, as you become more aligned with your purpose and power, you'll stop obsessing over being remembered. Because real men aren't remembered by everyone. They're missed by the ones who truly had them and lost them. So no, she can't replace you, because what you offered came from a place she didn't understand when she had it. But now she does, and even if she never says it out loud, that realization will live quietly in the spaces where your presence used to be. Keep becoming, keep rising. Don't do it for her to see. Do it so you never forget who you are again. Because the most powerful version of you is the one who no longer needs to be chosen to feel complete. You are the difference she never knew she needed until it was gone.